Hello, everyone. It's Matthew McKenzie here. Care advocate, care activist, care champion, raising awareness of unpaid carers who care for someone with long-term ill health or caregivers. Now, I'm involved, and if you've checked out my blog, I'm involved in quite a few things that promote equity. One of them being the Patient Care Race Equality Framework, which was launched by NHS England. Now, within that framework, there's focus on equity, on minority patients and carers regarding the mental health system. One of the things in PCREF, and don't worry about academic too much. This isn't really too much about this framework. This is, as you can tell by the title, something completely different. But one of the things that framework looks at is how faith and spirituality plays a part when it comes to those going through mental ill health or those caring for them can use that to help them guide through the mental health system and increase resilience regarding their journey as carer or cared for. So I decided to do this lecture. It's going to be a fairly long one, but I will split it up if you want to jump to specific points in this lecture. And I have previously come from a faith background. I didn't stay that long in it. I did decide to work towards more personal spirituality. I always feel spirituality and faith is most times a personal thing, and it can't always be measured as the same for everyone because we are all different. But I felt I needed to try and get this lecture out because how it links to unpaid carers, black minority carers, even though I may say black, it can be applied to other minority types. Take what you need from the lecture. So to continue, how can faith and spirituality actually influence those who are unpaid carers or caregivers, um, and going through a tricky journey caring for someone with long-term ill health? And I think, to be honest, I'll put this towards long-term mental ill health that the black carer is caring for. How can faith and spirituality influence that role? So for many black carers, faith and spirituality play a central role in navigating the challenges of caregiving. It can play a very important role, whether it's through religious beliefs, church communities, or even what I've mentioned, which I consider myself a personal spirituality, where faith actually can provide a source of strength, resilience, and a form of coping mechanisms. However, as I'm going to point out in this lecture, it can also create pressure, stigma, and internal conflicts that impact mental health and well-being. And, I've Googled a lot around, I've taken a lot from my own experiences and what I've heard from other carers regarding faith. So you can see what I'm aiming towards here. Black carers, faith and spirituality, and mental health and well-being, and it all comes together. And that's what you're going to find out through this lecture. So this lecture actually explores the role of faith in the Black carers' experience, how it supports and challenges unpaid caregivers, and ways to balance spirituality and practical self-care. Because this is my point of view. You don't have to agree with me. I do feel we can't ignore our own mental well-being, no matter what background we're from regarding if it's faith or spirituality, or even if we don't have the focus on faith. Mental well-being should be something we can focus on and not be pushed out. And I will warn of the dangers of faith and spirituality. And I'm not saying it's completely dangerous, but the things I do feel unpaid carers, black carers need to be aware of. So the positive role, we look at the positive role first of faith in the black carer's journey. And one of the most important things I always state is the resilience factor, strength and resilience through faith. And I will also have put in examples of statements that can be, or comments of things that I've heard that can give an idea of what I'm trying to get at. So, for many Black carers, faith is a source of strength. There's no doubt about that. It helps unpaid carers persevere through the emotional and physical demands of caregiving, whether it's belief that God has a purpose or that trials lead to growth that helps carers endure hardships or challenges that they face. That they face. And here's the first comment um, that is picked up. Someone could be saying, whenever I feel overwhelmed, and we could take this from a Black carer who has a background in faith uh, and spirituality. They're saying, whenever I feel overwhelmed, I pray. It reminds me that I'm not alone and that my strength comes from God. So for those who are not of a background of faith and spirituality, how can faith and spirituality help them? And this is really important, I'm going to say, because there are situations within the mental health system that can have bias against those who are from a faith or spirituality background and may ignore that and may ignore the situations when a mental health patient would perhaps say the same thing. And they may also be going through challenges and difficulties, obviously due to mental ill health. And thus, they may seek ways to help them cope and bring strength from that. So it doesn't have to be God, it could be other form of faith. So how, when someone says a system like that, I'm talking about Black carers, how does it help? And this, I guess, is aimed at your mental health professionals. So it actually encourage hope and perseverance in difficult times. So when a Black carer is perhaps in a meeting with talking about their loved one or how they're trying to cope themselves to a mental health professional and they say these things, professionals need to be aware of their unconscious bias. I'm not saying that all are like that. That would be clearly wrong. But it's something they need to be aware of. So I'm just giving ideas and example as to why Black mental health carers would, would use faith and spirituality to help them through difficult times. Other things would be provide comfort through prayer, scripture, and meditation. And that's just what I'm saying. It helps any type of carer. It doesn't have to be Black carer, but this particular lecture is on Black carers. So that's another reason why they feel it would help them. Another thing is faith-based communities, and not just the Black carer by themselves. They may belong to a faith-based community, and the professional might be sort of thinking, well, why are you not going to your care support group? Well, Black carers can often find support, emotional or practical, through faith-based communities, which explains a good reason for the mental health profession to link into those faith-based communities. And I'll tell you the more reasons why, not than just this particular reason. So the church and community support, how does this all link together? Well, the Black church has historically been a place of refuge, especially for those dealing with hardship, and that includes racism. Many carers actually rely on church groups, pastors, religious communities for guidance, financial aid, and form of emotional support. So here's another statement to give more examples as to what I'm getting at. So someone is saying, when my mother's health declined, and again I'm talking about mental health, my church community stepped in. They brought meals, prayed with us, and even helped with transport to hospital visits. So how does this help? Why is it so important to Black carers to use the faith and spirituality? Well, it creates a strong support system. Black churches often provide food, counseling, and forms of social service. So one of the common things is that carers can be isolated. And I'm not saying it's just only Black churches. I'm not saying that it's just that. I'm just providing the focus on the minority aspect. Faith leaders offer spiritual guidance and encouragement. So that again could be one of the reasons why it helps Black carers when they have that spirituality and faith background. And then what I've mentioned before, when a professional says, why are you not going to your care support group? Well, you've got a support group in that church providing space to share caregiving struggles. Now, it's not one side or the other. I have known non-faith or non-spiritual care groups being run in a church because the church allows that open space to engage with the community, and they're not looking to convert, they're just supporting the community. But I suppose the majority, I suppose, will have a faith-based um, carer community that acknowledges that there are those caring for someone with mental ill health or any types of long-term health issues. Other things on the positive role of faith in the Black carers' experience in spirituality is the coping mechanisms. So faith-based practices such as prayer, fasting, meditation, and worship can actually help Black carers manage stress and maintain that emotional balance. Many believe that surrendering worries to God or another form of deity reduces anxiety and provides peace. So I've got another comment here. To give an example, look, when I feel helpless, I remind myself that God is in control. It keeps me from breaking down. So how does this help the Black carer regarding faith and spirituality? Well, the Black carer will say, listen, it reduces stress by shifting focus to a higher power. Other examples is it creates moments of peace through prayer, gospel music, or scripture. And lastly, helps Black carers find meaning in their role, seeing caregiving as a calling rather than a burden. But hold fast, because there are challenges in faith and caregiving. There is a clash and there are dangers if we're not aware of Black carers, or any type of carers from religious background caring for someone, are not aware, and there can be pitfalls, as with anything. What are the challenges? I prayed away mentality and mental health stigma. Now, listen, while faith actually can provide strength, it's a sad thing to say some Black communities actually dismiss mental health challenges, believing that prayer alone should be enough. Black carers dealing with burnout, anxiety, or depression may feel guilty for seeking therapy or professional help. And here's a comment. When I told my pastor I was struggling, he said, just pray away. But I needed therapy too. So you can see what I'm getting at here. What I'm trying to get at is that it's so important to have a balanced view when it comes to faith and spirituality. And that can be a contentious issue. And I know I'm going to clash with someone saying I'm a heathen or something like that. But my lived experience on seeing the effects of mental illness, it shows me different. And I do feel we should have a mix where mental health services can engage with faith-based communities. And also trying to say it's so important that Black carers or minority groups who use faith and spirituality shouldn't put things off and shouldn't be pressured not to seek forms of professional mental health support. And there are, and I will go on to this in a bit, there are faith-based communities that actually do this, that actually provide their own form of mental well-being, and they're trained in it. Let's continue. So how does this hurt the Black carer? Well, it's not just the Black carer alone. This can actually extend to the whole community. But first, it can create guilt. Black carers may feel like they're failing spirituality if the prayer doesn't relieve their struggles or mental health struggles. It also prevents people from seeking therapy, and this can cascade to the community if there's a strong grip, religious grip regarding and I can say stigma, mental health stigma. So prevents people from seeking therapy due to fear of judgment from religious communities, which can be very strong. It also suppresses emotions, leading to continued burnout, isolation, and deep exhaustion. Because if you're just using prayer alone, and the exhaustion, the stress, depression exists and continues to exist, it'll just get worse. Let's continue. So how, and these are solutions or ideas, how can you as a black carer, and I've hinted to quite a lot already when these things happen, and I mentioned combining faith, taking that balanced view, combining faith with professional mental health support, and also seeking it early. Also seek faith-based therapists, I've mentioned this already, who understand both spirituality and mental health and mental well-being. But on the other side of the coin, which is what I'm trying to do now, is educating church leaders on the importance of counseling and therapy. But there are other challenges, not just this one. So what are the other challenges? Well, the expectation of endless strength. Black carers, and especially women, and you can disagree with me, I'm not a woman, but this is something that's I've heard and that's fairly common, are often expected to be selfless, strong, unwavering in their faith. Now, this belief can be rooted in culture and religious traditions. It can make it hard to admit when they're struggling. So here's an example I've put here. As a black woman, I was taught to be strong. I've had no choice. My faith told me to serve without complaining. Then after a while, I was at breaking point inside. Now, why am I mentioning black women? People might think, what's this man going on about here? I'll tell you why. The majority of the caring experience with unpaid carers is done mostly by women. I'm not saying there's not an issue when it comes to young black men. I'll get to that in another lecture. But for now, this bit anyway is focusing on black carers, and a lot of them are women. And what we don't want to see is that role break down because of something that can be so helpful. Like, and I'm saying faith and spirituality that can be so helpful, be turned into something that can give challenge to that role, that unpaid carer's role. So how does this hurt? It expresses vulnerability. Carers may feel they must endure without seeking help, and that's a tragedy. Encourage self-sacrifice to a point of neglecting the black carer's own personal needs, that being the physical and mental well-being, and also create shame around setting boundaries, saying, I need a break, can actually turn to, it feels like a lack of faith. So you're not praying hard enough, you're not strong enough in your faith, and therefore you're suffering because of it. So how to overcome that? Well, first recognize that rest is holy. Even Jesus took time to retreat and restore. Embrace the power of no. This is boundaries, by the way. So embracing the power of no. Helping others doesn't mean you have to sacrifice yourself. And even if you're not from a faith-based background, that's something you need to take note of. And remind yourself, seeking help is not a sign of weak faith. It's common sense in a sense that you know when it's time to seek that help. Don't delay it. So, lastly, on this bit, church stigma around certain health conditions where some black carers caring for loved ones with psychosis or schizophrenia or even forms of dementia face additional struggles because the mental illnesses are sometimes misunderstood in religious spaces. And conditions like psychosis may be viewed as spiritual attacks. And I'll give you an example of form of possession rather than medical conditions. So here's another comment of place saying, some in my church have told me my brother's schizophrenia was demonic. They said he needed deliverance, not a doctor. So again, you can see what I'm trying to get at here. I'm trying to dispel stigma. I'm not saying all faith and religions have stigma, but they can unfortunately be hit hard by it. So I'm just trying to challenge the problem of stigma within faith-based communities. So how does this hurt? Well, it's the delay. It delays proper treatment. People may prioritize exorcism. Remember, I've mentioned possession. So people may prioritize exorcism over medication. It increases stigma. Remember what I'm saying before, that I'm trying to combat stigma? Well, this type of behavior actually increases stigma. Carers, black carers, minority carers may avoid talking about their loved one's illness, especially in the faith-based community in the church. And this also prevents access to real support, making carers feel even more isolated, and the nature of unpaid caring is hidden. And if it's in a faith-based community, that is full of stigma, and that makes it even worse. So how can we combat this? Well, again, it's educating religious communities on mental health as a real medical issue. Remember, I've said this time and time again, it's a balance. It's a balance of faith with medical treatment. Prayer and therapy can actually coexist. It's a good thing. And for those who are in faith-based communities, it doesn't hurt to find faith-based mental health professionals who respect both medicine and spirituality. And again, I've mentioned this before. There are communities, faith-based communities, that actually are trained in mental health. So the last section of my lecture is finding a healthy balance between faith and practical unpaid caregiving. Faith should be a tool for strength, not a source of pressure. So here, black carers can actually honor the spirituality of prioritizing their own well-being. The idea really is to use faith as a foundation. It shouldn't be a limitation. Yes, it is okay to pray, but it's also okay to go to therapy when we need it. Seeking professional help does not mean you lack faith. It's the opposite. You have faith in yourself to seek professional support. Healing comes in many forms, including medical care, community, and self-care. We shouldn't neglect this. We should also set boundaries and protect your energy so you're not a failure for needing a break. And even faith leaders rest. So should you. And think of it as if it comes to God, does God not call you to burn out for others? I don't think so. I really don't. A good God, I would feel, wants the best for all of us. The other thing is to find spirituality that's inclusive. This is something for yourself, and I'll see if I can put some stuff in the description of this video and follow up with a blog. I think it's useful, this is my thoughts, it's useful to look for Christian, Muslim, or any cultural competent therapist who can integrate faith into mental health support. It's also important to engage in faith-based self-care practices. Journaling, and I always say this and I say it time and time again, is a good form of self-care. So is meditation, so is music, it doesn't have to be gospel, and positive affirmations. I've missed that out. So it's not just affirmation, but positive affirmations. And building a support system actually beyond the church, so we're not sort of kept in and locked in. It is good to connect with black care support groups, even outside religious spaces. And it's not completely true that there isn't good care support groups inside religious spaces, but you might get access to other things and a different form of view for those outside it. It's about learning on your journey, on your caregiving journey, and you can learn from others. With building a support system, it's also important to advocate for mental health awareness in faith communities. So don't wait to be told. Whatever you learn, you can share with others. And lastly, find a balance between spiritual healing and practical care. They can coexist. So my final thoughts regarding faith as strength and not a burden is that faith and spirituality can empower black carers, where it provides resilience, purpose, and a sense of peace. But it should never be used to dismiss the struggles, deny mental health care, or pressure carers into endless sacrifice. because we all know what happens when there's endless sacrifice. There are limits to everything. By balancing faith with self-care, therapy, and community support, Black carers can actually navigate the journey without losing themselves in the process. So I want to ask you one question, and how has faith influenced your caregiving experience? So discuss in the comments section of this video, and if you like this video, give it a like and subscribe to the channel. So I'd say thanks for dropping by, and remember, look after yourself.